Hey, welcome to Ham Radio Perspectives. I'm Tom, WA9TDD.
And I'm Quinn, K8QS, and this is one of the wildest videos we've ever done. And we have to tell you a little bit about why we're doing this and what we're doing with it, because we don't want to be misunderstood. But for 4 or 5 years, Tom and I have been talking about this idea of if archaeologists dug up the remains of ham radio, let's say 200-300 years from now. We don't know what ham radio will be like, but the archaeologists will be digging up stuff related to what we do with the hobby now. What would they think ham radio was? That's the question that has intrigued us, and we've spent a lot of time talking about this in recent years. And finally, we figured out a way that we think we can do this, and around what would be called the medieval guild. So, tell us what we mean by that, Tom.
Okay, so what's a guild? In the medieval times, craftsmen were formed into guilds as an organization, for social customs. They had designated behaviors and practices, ethics, worldviews, and they work with other related organizations.
Yeah, and in fact, the guilds and religion were linked because these were religious societies or religious cultures. And so what you're going to see here is that we're using guild language, we're using quasi-religious or spiritual language to get at what we think the archaeologists would get at. So stay with us on this and all the way through and see what you think, and then make some comments. Because we think this is one of the most interesting videos that we've done, and also one of the most difficult. So, Tom, where would we start? What would be, suppose these guys, these archaeologists dug up some recordings of hams. What would they find and what would they make of it?
Well, I think first they would find what would possibly be called a chant or maybe an oath, CQ, CQ,
CQ, CQ.
Done with a musical quality by some hams while staring at a waterfall that they saw on the radio, and they're pleading for a reply from some elusive expedition.
Yeah, what would they make of CQ? They'd probably think it's almost prayer-like. People are trying to get a response from a deity or other people or something. With all the CQ stuff, what was all of that about? Right. And another aspect of this, second, would be the idea of specialized craftsmen. Okay, so we have Kenwood, ICOM, Ellacraft, and so on. We have these different labels, which actually are reflecting or symbolizing expertise of a kind within the group. Or you could look at it in terms of different modes. So this ancient archaeological dig of ham radio would look at, these were the SSB people. These were the CW people. These were the digital people. They had their own distinct particular set of rules and procedures and followers.
And they also had their own rituals. There was this thing they called DXing, contesting. It was like Wheel of Fortune. They had an ODAs. They had POTAs, IOTAs, SODAs. What are these ODA things? In the meantime, they continue to be building and innovating and experimenting, and in a lot of cases, complaining.
Yeah, that's funny. What would they make of the complaining? If they got access to social media, all of the old QRZ.com comments and so on, or comments from our channel, and they would find these complainers and all there too, these different kinds of rituals. Another thing is the tribal speak. And I wonder about the tribal speak. So we have Q codes, we have traditional secret codes passed down from previous generations that have little or no relevance to current times, using CW abbreviations on voice modes and all. I don't know what they would make of all of that, but it's kind of interesting. What about these master craftsmen, Tom?
Okay, well, you always had your master craftsman. He was usually the guild revolved around the master craftsman. And these master craftsmen, they were designated by their ability to be 20 WPM extra class holders, or
The head of the
anyone
guild.
or anyone that seemed to have this, this vintage call sign. You know, these
Yeah.
days we have those stinking vanity call signs.
Yeah. Yes. The vanity call signs. What would they make of that too? We wonder about that. And about, let's say, the places that we do this ham stuff, Tom. What would that be called, and what would they think about it?
I would say they would say this. They look at their workplace where these hams hang out, and it's a place they call the shack. The shack, and appeared to be a place of sacrificing hours of frustration and sometimes rejoicing after they made some kind of rare contact. And we noticed that in the rural areas, sometimes it was held outdoors on a picnic table under a sacred oak tree running QRP.
What's QRP? That's got to be some special thing in that culture. And so some of the icons that they would find from this culture of ham radio through archaeology would be things like rig makers' logos. They would wonder about those logos and what the logos meant to these people. They would wonder about these statements of faith in the brand. Is that what it was? Logos, and then we get our swag, and we have it on caps, and we have it on shirts. Is this allegiance to a particular group within the guild? Or what in the world is this? These sacred brands, seemingly.
So, and then that brings us to the journeymen. This guild had journeymen. They would travel to far off places like Dayton. Where's Dayton? Ohio, Orlando.
Pilgrimages.
And sometimes they would just go to the local tribe of the poorly attended ham fest just to fellowship.
Yeah. Yeah, just a fellowship. Very interesting. So they get together, these folks, and interestingly, they're mostly male. So this seems to be more of a brotherhood than a sisterhood, with some special thing here for men, and the spiritual sites. We talked about a little bit about the shack and so on, and thinking about that spiritually. But what about pictures that they would find that we'd taken of old vacuum tubes glowing? And there would be people sitting around looking at these technological inventions and things glowing, and they wonder how they made this glow. They have no idea what an old vacuum tube is for, what it really looked like. And so the QSL cards, what would they make of a QSL card? Would that be some kind of special site? Hey, people put these up on their wall, and they had them hanging on their wall in these special containers. What were they looking at? And what did all of those calls signify? In this special guild. And of course, there would have to be tools of the trade, Tom, in any guild. What would they think are the tools of the trade?
Well, they would look at things that we would call rigs, these boxes with niles and knobs and, all kinds of, like, they powered it up and had a menu on it. What is this, some kind of restaurant? And then they found the sacred D104 Golden Eagle microphone on top of ancient copies of the ARRL handbook from 1934. It had to be nearly a sacred text.
Yeah. Why did they keep these forever? Why weren't they not all just destroyed, used to burn up in the fireplaces or whatever? There's got to be deep archaeological significance for the guild here. And let's get into that a little bit about the idea of relics. Relics. What would be the relics besides the QSL cards and the old radios that were collecting dust? What would they make of a ham that had collected, let's say, 20 old quote unquote rigs that they found? Why did they save those? Were they special, some kind of relic? And they would maybe feel that there was some special significance in those things.
And that brings us to the patrons. Every guild, every journeyman, every craftsman needed a patron to continue his work. And they looked through old copies of QST and they found rig reviewers and rig specs analysts who were called to speak the truth, regardless of the consequences. These must be the patrons.
Yeah, the patrons. They may also, Tom, look at the ads in magazines like QST and try to figure out if what was going on here with these money exchanges, you know. and then they would finally run across a copy of the moral code, right? So a guild has an ethics statement of some kind, and so they would find the amateur's code. In this case, Tom, who wrote this? When they found it, how long ago, what year was this done? And then let's go over the contents of this code.
Oh, well, they found that this was written sometime in centuries past, in the year 1928 by an individual called Paul M. Siegel. And it forms the core ethical foundation of this ham radio craft. And it outlines a code of conduct, balancing considerations for other craftspeople, progressive technical knowledge, and a commitment to serve the community and country. And the code rests on 6 core principles.
All right. The archaeologists find this, gang. Now think about each of these in terms of how an archaeologist hundreds of years from now would interpret each one.
Number 1 is be considerate. Never knowingly use the airwaves in a way that lessens the pleasure of others. This means always listening before transmitting to ensure the frequency is clear.
Yes. And number 2 would be loyal. Offer loyalty, encouragement, and support to fellow people in the guild, to the local clubs of the guild, and to national societies like the ARRL.
Well, ARRL, that must be some kind of rune. RUNE rune.
Look it up.
The guild member must be progressive.
Ooh.
Keeping your station up to date, technically efficient, and operating practices above reproach.
I love that. Above reproach. And we have to be friendly. Operate slowly and patiently when requested. Offer friendly advice to beginners and be kind assistance to others.
True. And also you must be balanced. Treat radio as a hobby. There we have a secret word there. We've discovered what this is. It's a hobby.
It's a hobby.
That should never interfere with your familial duties.
With your job or your duties, school. Yeah.
Or other duties to your job, your school, or your community.
Oh, wow. What was going on here? And then finally, last but not least, in this code from 1928, be patriotic. Keep your station and operating skills always ready for service to your country and community. Wow. They would have a heyday with that, Tom, trying to figure out what all of that meant. Beyond this historic creed, of course, modern operating etiquette dictates keeping transmissions free of profanity, avoiding sensitive, polarizing subjects, and mentoring newcomers. Oh, wow, Tom, I tell you, ham radio, as looked at by the archaeologists and the anthropologists, and there's a joke, by the way, in the academic community about archaeologists within the anthropological community, that everything they find, all of the old stuff they find from years back, they attribute religious significance to. and so we've tried to do that a little bit under the idea of the guild. So just remember what this all comes down to is the purpose of ham radio is to love thy fellow ham as thyself. This is Ham Radio Perspectives, where we look at ham radio technology, history, and culture. And this has been a look at culture. Ham radio culture is a way of life through the eyes of some future people who will probably get it all wrong, much more wrong than we have, Tom. 73 from Ham Radio Perspectives. I'm Quinn, K8QS.
I'm Tom, WA9TDD.
Thanks for watching, everybody. See you later.